try to sort of summarize it as we go along. Okay, then? So the Pasuk says here at the beginning of Tazria, that's Perek Yud Beis, Pasuk Gimel, Ubayom Hashmini Yimol Besar Orlasa. And this is the mitzvah of Milah. And the Rav wants to say that there's the Maisa Milah, and then there's the Chal Shem Gav. So on the one hand, Milah is no different than any other mitzvah like Netilas Lulav or like Achilas Matzah, and there's a Maisa mitzvah, and that's the Maisa Milah. But on the other hand, there's something very unique about Milah, that there's a status change of the person who undergoes Milah. And there's no status change in a person who takes a lulav or eats matzah or sits in the sukkah. But after Milah, the child changes his status, and now he becomes a ben bris. He's allowed to eat kodshim. He's allowed to enter into the Beis Hamikdash. So we find also Milah in Gerus. Milah is a status change. So these are the two dimensions of Milah. And therefore, Rav Soloveitchik claims we make two brachas on Milah that correspond to these two dimensions. On the one hand, we make a bracha al ha-Milah, and that refers to the Maisa mitzvah of Milah. And on the other hand, there's a second bracha, and that is that Asher Kidshanu le'achniso bebriso shel Avram Avinu, and that, according to Rabbeinu Tam, will be recited after the Milah, because after the Milah, there's a Chal Shem ben Bris. Now, Rav Soloveitchik mentions a Medrash Tanchuma in Parshat Tazria that tells a story about Turnus Rufus, who was the terrible Roman officer or governor. And he asked Rabbi Akiva, why does HaKadosh Baruch Hu create people with an orla when he hates orla? And Rabbi Akiva says, well, take a look at the earth. The earth doesn't yield bread. In other words, HaKadosh Baruch Hu expects of us that we toil, and with great effort we bring forth the bread. And we have to sanctify ourselves. If we were born already in a state of Milah, then there was no need for us to improve ourselves. Here we have to work hard in order to achieve Kedusha, in order to achieve Kedushas Yisrael, the holiness. And that's where a person is obligated to circumcise himself. Now, Milah is also part of Gerus, and the concept of Milah in Gerus is the shedding of blood, where what we call atofes dam bris, and the dam itself means suffering. You know, when a person gives up dam, and that toil and suffering is a necessary preamble, so to speak, to Kedusha. You cannot receive Kedusha just Memela, passively. You can't be karka olam in the language of Masechtas Sanhedrin. So what's our responsibility? Let's say, for example, you give me a klaf and I write a Sefer Torah. That's not enough. That doesn't generate Kedusha of the Sefer, even if it has the Shemos of Hashem. And the klaf is a beautiful klaf. But we need kavana. We need man to play a special role in generating the kedusha of in this case, the Heftzah Shel Torah. And the scroll will only have sanctity after a person has the intention of writing the Sefer Torah for the purpose of vesting holiness in the klaf. So we need man to have the right action. And ultimately, he says that in, for example, Kriyat Shema, that's the ultimate expression of faith. It also refers to a certain level of intention that a person intends to accept upon himself the commitment and the faith. He says that just like a Sefer Torah is invested with Kedusha by man, so too a Korban requires man to be Magdish the Korban. And through his Hakadosha, he sanctifies the animal for a korban. Or, for example, the Yomim Tovim. We need Makadesh Yisrael Vazmanim, that Klal Yisrael have to sanctify the festivals. So whether we're talking about a physical object, like in the case of an animal for Kodshim, or a scroll for a Sefer Torah, or we're talking about something as abstract as time, in the case of Kedushas HaRegolim, we always need man to sanctify, to generate that Kedusha. And he says it's very rare where man is not called upon to be an active participant in the creation of Kedusha. I think he's referring to perhaps Shabbos, maybe the Migdash Shlishi. All right, that's maybe not such a great example. Okay, so that's as far as Pasuk Gimel is concerned. And now we move on to Pasuk Zayin. V'krivo lifnei Hashem v'chiper aleha v'tahara mimkor dameha zos toras hayoledes lazachar o lanekeva. So let's just read the English translation here. And he shall offer it up before the Lord and effect atonement for her, and thus she will be purified from the source of her blood. So we're talking about a yoledes, and a yoledes needs a korban. It's called the chiper aleha. She needs an atonement. And the reason for this is because while she's giving birth and suffering so much pain, she may have taken a shvur that she will be poresh mibala, so that she would not give birth again. And she needs kapara, because she's basically undermining the whole marriage obligation. So she is now taking upon herself an oath that contradicts the oath and the obligation of marriage of Ishus, and therefore her oath cannot be fulfilled. She needs kapara for taking an oath that cannot be fulfilled. And here he quotes the Kli Yakar. I just want to comment, I find it very, very interesting and quite surprising that the Rav would quote the Kli Yakar. But in any event, he says the following, that this kapara of Yoledes really goes back to Chava, who ate from the Eitz Hadas. And we have a bracha, a tefillah, every single Shmona Esrei, Ata chonein ladam das, and we ask for knowledge, and we ask God, we petition God for understanding. So now you have the Eitz Hadas, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu commands Adam and Chava not to eat from the Eitz Hadas, but yet we want das. We pray for das. And the answer perhaps is, based on what we said before, that the role of man is to be active, to be an active participant. And here too, by eating of the Eitz Hadas, it's true that man would gain das, but that would be effortlessly, without any effort on his behalf. And the Rav wants to explain, based on this Kli Yakar, a connection between the kapara of Yoledes and the chait of Chava of having eaten from the Eitz Hadas. Why does a mother who just gave birth require a kapara? She rejects the assertion associated with childbirth. She is reminiscent of the sin of Adam and Chava. They don't want to exert any effort. They just want to eat from the Eitz Hadas and gain knowledge. And I just want to add something here on my own. They say about the Vilna Gaon that a malach came to him to teach him Torah, and he refused. Because to gain Torah knowledge by just taking a pill, so to speak, or just listening to the malach, without exerting any effort, that's not how you gain Torah knowledge. And I would add another footnote here, that when a baby is born, even after the malach taught the baby Torah for 9 months, the baby forgets its Torah, because Torah is meant to be learned. It's meant to be studied. There's a great deal of effort involved in making a kinyan and acquiring Torah. So that which you got from the Malach, gratis, spoon feeding you, so to speak, for 9 months, the Torah, that's not real knowledge. Now, after childbirth, a woman has to wait quite a bit in order to purify herself. So she's tmeya, let's say in the case of a zachar for the balance of from 7 to 40, and in the case of an akeva, the balance of from 14 to 80. And the Rav wants to say, based on this breakthrough of the Kli Yakar, that we can understand what is the connection here between that period of time that's necessary for her to be mitayr herself and the chet of Adam and Chava when they ate from the Eitz Hadas. The chet of Achila Me'etz Hadas took place on the Friday of their creation. And Chazal tell us that they ate from the Eitz Hadas before Shabbos, on that Friday that they were created. Had they waited a few more hours patiently until Shabbos, then there would have been a heter to eat from the Eitz Hadas. That's the medrash in Vayikra Rabbah. And he adds Likutei Torah. I think he means by Likutei Torah the Alter Rebbe, I'm not sure. So we have here a sin of impetuousness, when you're not willing to wait. So as a kapara for that sin, a yoledes, who has the status similar to a nida, and she's impure, she also requires a great deal of patience. In the case of Orla, after a person plants his tree, he has to wait 3 years before he can eat and enjoy the fruit of that tree. So this is a lesson that we learn over and over again in the mitzvahs of the Torah, that there's an importance of discipline, of waiting, and of exerting an effort in order to achieve. Okay, we move on now. 1 second. To Pasuk Ches. I'm just going to get myself a little water to drink. Okay. Pasuk Ches. V'im lo timtza yada deiseh v'lakchosh deisorim o shnei b'nei Yonah echad lolav echad l'chatas v'chiper aleh kohen v'tahera. So Yoledes is given an option of what's called a carbon ola v'yored, which means that if she has the financial backing, then she can bring a seh, v'lakcha deiseh. But if she cannot lotim tzayada deiseh, then instead she brings shtei sorim o shnei b'nei Yonah, a pigeon, a turtle dove, as a korban chatas. And Rav Soloveitchik now quotes a Torah's Kohen in Parshat Tazria. Why does the Torah indicate the types of birds that she has to bring in a case of an aliyah, in a case of dalus, and she cannot afford a seh? And furthermore, the Torah teaches us the exact number of birds. So it's the type of birds, right? The genus, the species of birds, and the number of birds. Says the Sifra, we might have assumed that she should be like a Tamei Migdash, meaning if someone contracts Tumah and enters into the Beis HaMikdash in a state of Tumah, they have to bring 3 birds. So if they cannot bring a seh, because they don't have the funds to do so, then the Tamei Migdash, who's an ani, brings what's called a ken, which is a pair of birds. One as a chatos, and the other as an ola. Right, so now we have, just 1 second. So we have a ken, and that's 2 birds. Just 1 second, I'm just trying to work out the third. So he brings an ola and a chatos, fine, from a ken. And that's going to replace the seh in the case of a dal. Now she has to offer a 3rd bird as an additional chatos. Okay, so we're going to try to understand the Havamina here in the Torah's Kohanim. Why would we think that she would have to bring a 3rd bird? And the Torah had to go out of its way to say explicitly that she brings 2 birds. One is an ola to replace the seh, and one as a chatos. But without that explication, we would have assumed that she has to bring a 3rd bird as an additional chatos. So it seems, just at a simple level in the Torah's Kohanim, that basically her primary chiyuv would bring a chatos from a bird. I'm not sure which bird, maybe any bird. And then she has to bring, like the Tamei Migdash, a ken, which consists of 2 birds. One is an ola, one is a chatos. So at the end of the day, she brings 3 birds.
Oh.
Okay, so Rav Soloveitchik is going to try to explain this Havamina, that she should bring 3 birds. What is the nature of a korban chatos? A korban chatos is a kapara. Now, in the Havamina, she needs a 3rd bird as an extra korban chatos. In other words, there's 1 bird as a chatos that's part of the ken. Again, all this is in the Havamina, and that's in addition to the bird that she brought as a chatos. She has 2 birds as a chatos. And the Rav says that this has nothing to do with kapara. Because let's say this Yoledes was not poor, then she would bring a seh as an ola, and she brings a bird as a chatos. So 1 bird is enough for achieving a chatos. Right, the other animal, which is a seh, that's already something else. That's an ola. But as far as chatas is concerned, it's enough that she brings one bird as a chata. So why would a poor yoledes have to bring two birds as a chatas? And he says the need to bring the second carbon chatas is not for kapara purposes, because that again we could achieve with one chatas, would have been solely technical. The necessity to offer a complete ken, which consists of one bird as an ola and the second as a chatas. So somehow the ken, which we would have derived from Tamei Migdash, is an entity unto itself that cannot replace the chatas, which she brought as a bird, but is in addition to that chatas. But it's an entity. It's like a unit, and that unit is made up of two different parts. One is a bird as an ola, and the other is a bird as a chatas. Again, in the case of a poor yoledes. But we should not entertain, says Rav Soloveitchik, the thought that she needs a second bird as a second chatas for the purpose of atonement. It's only because she needs to bring a ken, and that ken is outside of the purview of the chatas that she brings, and therefore she ends up bringing two birds as a chatas. And now the Rav quotes a Gemara in Krisus Daf Tes that says that in a ken, it is impossible to separate one bird from the other. We must posit that not only does this rule prohibit the offering of a single bird, but it tells us that a ken must follow a specific protocol, that bringing one bird as an ola automatically requires that a second one be brought as a chatas. And I think the Rav is trying to explain this idea of a unit of a ken. And that unit generates a principle that it's impossible to separate one bird from the other. And therefore, once you bring a bird as an ola, automatically you have to bring a second bird as a chatas. And that's what we call a technical necessity. Like the Mishnah says at the beginning of Kinim, this is the order of Kinim, one ola and one chatas. So the destitute woman who brings a bird as an ola as a replacement for the seh, then she's obligated to bring an extra bird as a chatas in order to complete the ken. If we go with the havamina that we would derive from Tamei Migdash, that she has to bring a ken. So again, we come back to our original question with a good answer. Why did the Torah have to, count out the number of birds and say shtei sorim, shnei b'nei yona? And the answer is because it was a havamina that she would have to bring three birds. One bird as a replacement for the seh, and that's an ola. Another bird is a chatos, and another bird that's dragged along from the ken that consists of a bird of an ola and also a bird of a chatos. Okay. So now we get to the parsha of Negoim, of Tzaras. Okay, so we're looking now at Pasuk Beis in Perkid Gimel. Adam ki yeh bi'or b'sara. And he refers now back to the beginning of Vayikra. What does it say at the beginning of Vayikra? Adam ki yakriv mikem karban lashem. So there we have the word mikem. In Saras, we don't have the word mikem. It just says Adam ki yeh ba'or b'sara. So he says the following. We understand the word of mikem as being fundamental in karbanos. Why mikem means that it's something that comes from your essence, from your will. You have an intense, profound will to bring a sacrifice, to bring a korban. So it's Adam ki yaakov mikem. It's from you, from your identity, your existential self. It's internal and it's spiritual. The Rambam in Hilchos Gerushin Perek Beis tells us that we beat up a recalcitrant husband who refused to give a get until he acquiesces and says, Rotzani. How do we force him to do so, says the Rambam? Because the inner essence of the Jew desires to comply with the requirements of the Beis Din. So he's got like a battle between the Yetzer Hara and his inner true desire. And in the case of a sin, he capitulates, so to speak, to his Yetzer Hara. And now to rectify it, he brings a korban with his true self from Mikem. All right, let's now see what he talks about. Saras, I'm trying to see. Why don't I find this? Oh. He says the following, that we should read the phrase bi'or b'sara as a substitute for mikem.
Oh.
Right? Instead of mikem, the Torah says Adam ki yeh, not mikem saras, but bi'or b'sara, like at least on the surface of his skin, so to speak. And he says the reason for that is because any contamination of taras is not embedded into the personality of the sinner. It's not a reflection or an expression of the essence of and true will of a person. It's all external. And he quotes a Gemara in Nedarim to prove this. This Gemara in Nedarim is familiar with us from Tisha B'Av, from the Kinnis, because in the Kinnis we tell a story about Yirmiyahu who met a disheveled woman, and he asked her who she is, and she said, I am Knesset Yisrael. And Yirmiyahu said that basically B'nos Yisrael Yafosei, right? They're beautiful, they're noble, they're good, they're holy, but Anius min avlasam, but because of their poverty, they're disheveled. And the Gemara in Nedarim says there was once an incident where a person vowed not to marry his homely niece, right? She was not very good looking. Then the niece was taken to Rabbi Shmuel and he beautified her. And the one who took a vow, Rabbi Shmuel wanted to be mater his neder, his shvuah, and he asked him, if you would have seen how beautiful she is, would you have taken the vow? And he said, no. So Rabbi Shmuel was mater the vow. And then he cried out, Benos Yisrael Yafo, saying, Ela anius me navlosam. So when a Jew performs transgressions which lower his prestige, we should know that the motivation to sin always stems from an external influence. Okay, then, John, I think we'll stop here.
Good.
All right, I think we accomplished quite a bit over here. And I'll wish you a great Shabbos.
Thank you very much.
So we're making a Kiddush in Hashem the Shabbos for our new granddaughter that was born last Shabbos. Yeah. All right, be well. Best regards. Kol Tov. So let's just take a look at Sapachas for a moment. And this is again in Pasuk Beis. Let's see how he translates Sapachas. He just transliterates it. And he quotes Vayikra Rabbah. Sapachas is a scam. And that's like a mashal for Madai, for the kingdom of the Medes. And the Madim raised Haman, the wicked Haman, and eventually he got the same klola as a snake, about which the pasuk in Bereishis Gimel says, "You shall walk on your belly." The wicked Haman slithered like a snake. He lacked self-confidence, a fawning personality. He lacked dignity. He had like a psychopathic behavior, resulting in his becoming the prime minister to King Achashverosh, but he was not a leader at all, Haman. He was weak, spineless, and he used flattery in order to get ahead, thinking that that would save his life. He behaved in a servile manner towards Esther, even after she exposed him. Like other haughty people, he did not realize how base he was, that he was actually a form of sapachas. There are two characteristics related to geya, meaning pride. There's gaiva, which is arrogant pride. That's a negative trait. That's spiritual tzaras. But there's also a positive form called geus. God is characterized as Hashem Malach geus lavesh in Tehillim Tzadigim. And therefore, we also have to imitate Hashem. We have to emulate his midos. Therefore, we have to avoid gaiva, but we have to seek out geus. We have to be careful not to behave like Haman, who thought that he was worthy of honor, he exclusively, but rather like Mordechai. Mordechai had no interest in kavod and gaiva and honor. As soon as they rode him through the city, he resumed wearing his sackcloth. He returned to the palace gate. Mordechai had geus. Geus is the royal horse and finery that has no meaning for him. What is geus? Geus is a certain self-esteem, a healthy process of self-respect, not arrogance, but self-respect and self-esteem. Arrogance results in a behavior like Haman's. Most extreme form, it leads to the worst tyrants and mass murderers. Okay, that's sapachas. And now there's usiaro lo hafach lavan, and this is pasuk dal. Okay, he talks about a Gemara B'Metzia, disagreement between Hashem and the Sifta Shalmala, the heavenly academy, about the presence of white hairs prior to the presence of Baheres. Is the person tar or tame? Hashem rules that the individual was tar, but the heavenly academy ruled that the person is tame. So the malachim in the Bezdin Shalmala judge with din, with strict judgment. And that's why they ruled that the person was impure. Hashem, on the other hand, rules with chesed and rachmanut. And therefore Hashem rules that the person is pure, judging man with the attribute of chesed. And Rabbi Bar Nachmani paskins like HaKadosh Baruch Hu that the person is pure, and a baskel came out blessing him. The Kotzker Rebbe remarked that every human being has, in a matter of speaking, two pockets. In one slip of paper, he writes, Anochi Ofer ve'efer. In another pocket, he writes on a slip of paper, Ma'at Melkim. Well, what's the beginning of the pasuk here? Man can reach dazzling spiritual heights. He's called upon to resolve heavenly disputes. But chasreu, sorry. But chasreu ma'at melokim. But on the other hand, it's Anochi Ofer ve'efer, like Moshe, for example, the greatest of all men died like all men died. He returns to the dust. Right, there's more here on Se'es and Baheres. Okay, then I'll stop here.